All right. Welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, Mr. AJ Applegarth. What is up, man? You're muted. How did you do that already? You're special.
Because I was unmuted when the song started playing and I was coughing and I was like, oh, great.
Oh my gosh, excuses.
See, I guess you just need to get me one of these as well.
Oh yeah, what did I say again?
I tolerate you. That's the
that's pretty fair. That's pretty fair.
My wife. That was awesome. I have yet to eat it because I wanted to show it on tonight's show. So,
all right. Well, let's get into things here. We're going to be talking some first base and catcher, little draft strategy and preview here. But of course, before we get into all of that, just want to remind everybody to hit that subscribe button, that like button, leave those reviews, leave the comments here on YouTube. And yeah, we appreciate it. We love hearing from you. And, we'll definitely try to respond. And then, of course, jump over to FantasySixPack.net, become an all-access member. You can save 15% by using promo code F6PMLB24. You're going to get access to our award-winning rankings for baseball, our projections. You can jump over to our Discord. You'll have access to all the members-only channels there where you can ask us your questions directly. We've got our draft cheat sheets available right now, which are customizable for pretty much any league setup. And if it doesn't work for you, just hit me up. I can probably figure out how to make it customizable for whatever you got going on. So we can make that happen. But yeah, jump over there. And then AJ, why don't you let everybody know what you think about some Fantrax action, man?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to jump on over and become an all-access member, you might as well just do the same thing over to Fantrax. Get your leagues on Fantrax. There's so much customizable stuff you can do with your leagues there. And the best part about it is you can take advantage of a lot of these customizations for free. You don't have to pay the upcharge to do it. Now, there are plenty of other options that you can do with paying as well, but you got to get over to Fantrax. I've moved my leagues over there. Joe's moved his leagues over there. I have one left that's hanging on that I'm pushing these guys like every week. Come on, we got to do it. And a couple of the guys in the league are already on Fantrax too, so they're getting behind my push as well. Lots of players, plenty of like I said, customization. And another thing is the customer service. Customer service from Fantrax is awesome. If you have a player that you are not seeing, especially in Dynasty, send them an email and they'll respond to you like right away. They'll be on it. They'll add the guy into the player pool. You get notifications. I'm still getting random notifications like every day for more and more players that just keep getting added. So it's likely the guy you're looking for is already there, but if he's not, they will get on it and they will get the guy there for you.
Absolutely, man. So yeah, go ahead and jump on over there and do that. But without further ado, let's bring in our guest this week. Glad to have him here joining us, Mr. Eric Cross, writer over there at FTN, Rotoballer, does the Toolshed podcast with Chris Clegg. I think you've got your own thing going on too, I believe, with Patreon. I know that. I forget the name of it. I apologize. But how's it going tonight, Eric?
It's pretty good, man. Yeah, I do the Patreon, so I'm kind of a little bit everywhere now. It's toolshedfantasy.com is my Patreon. And you mentioned Rotoball or FTN. We just finished recording an episode of Toolshed right before this. So yeah, it's been a busy night, busy time of year, but I love it. It's like I was saying, it's like Christmas in February when baseball. I mean, obviously, we've all been doing drafts and rankings and content throughout the off season, but with college baseball starting up, spring training, pitchers, catchers reporting, it really is like Christmas in February because baseball is back, and we have the next 9 months or whatever of just straight baseball every day. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Football is officially over. Let's move on from it. Let's talk some baseball. And you kind of mentioned it right there with our big news. Pitchers and catchers have reported they are there. They are doing their first warm-ups. I believe yesterday was a big day for a bunch of teams.
Yeah.
Getting out there, getting getting stretched out and everything. Saw a cool picture today of the Phillies and JT Realmuto and Garrett Stubbs. The kind of power and the party. So it's fun, man. I'm excited to talk some catchers and first base today.
Yeah, man.
Joe,
So
any other news that you have that
I
needs to
mean,
be
you talked about
mentioned?
pitchers catchers. I think probably the only big thing I didn't write it down, but Kyle Bradish obviously going to start the year on the IL, so that's a big blow to the Orioles. UCL injury, you just worry, what's coming around the corner with those, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But I think John Means hopefully will be able to step up if he can be healthy, which is sort of a question mark. I don't know. I mean, that Corbin Burns signing is going to be was supposed to be kind of a huge luxury to have these top three guys for the Orioles, but maybe now it's not quite going to be a top three anymore. So
yeah,
hopefully somebody will step up. But
yeah, indeed. All right, well,
let's jump into catchers.
Yeah, let's do it, man. First up here, we got the catcher position. So first question I've got for you guys for tonight is speaking of the Orioles, with Adley Rutschman likely being the clear number one catcher drafted in 2024, who would you make as your number one catcher if you end up passing on Adley? Eric, we'll start with you as the guest.
Yeah, no, it's funny. He is number one by a good 20 picks or so in ADP, but I don't think there's like that big of a gap. Yeah, he's my number one ranked catcher, and I love Adley. He's a stud. He's going to be an all-star for many, many years. But I don't think there's a lot of separation between him and the fourth or fifth catcher off the board.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like that. My tier one, it's him, it's Will Smith, it's William Contreras, and JT Realmuto. I've been back and forth on my 2-3 between Smith and Contreras. I've flip-flopped a couple times already. I was Contreras initially. I'm trying to figure out if I like Smith a little more or a little less after the Ohtani signing. And I think there's been a pretty split camp on that. Some people think that he'll DH less. But I'm like, well, he only DH'd 15 times last year. So that's not hard to, get him those extra 15 games, throughout the season at catcher. That's like one every other week pretty much, or a little bit more than that. So
yeah,
I think Will Smith's gonna have a really good year. I mean, he's probably gonna hit cleanup with this three-headed monster in front of him of Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani.
Is that good? Is that good?
Oh my Lord!
Never.
I mean,
I
geez.
don't know if I've heard of those guys. Are they?
I mean, that might be. I have to look at this. That might be like in the discussion for the best like trio of all time. Like it's so damn good, obviously. And he's gonna be the one hitting fourth for the most part and driving those guys in. And all three of those guys had OBPs over 400. So, it's either him or Contreras. And Contreras, I think, the power was always there, but then he became a better pure hitter over the last couple of years. Contact rates went up, K rate went down, walk rate went up, all while maintaining that pretty good quality of contact that he was known for coming up through the Braves system. So one of those two, they're both going, again, 25, 30 picks or so on average behind Adley. And I think there's, a chance they could out-earn Adley this year or be pretty close. So I'm not going to get any shares of Adley as much as I love him. I still like the price. And if I want to go early on a catcher, I'm going one of those two guys, again, a good 2-3 rounds later.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, I'm totally with you. If we're talking draft strategy here, Adley's not a target of mine. You're paying a super premium for him in order to get him on your roster, and I get it. He is the elite catcher out of the entire group. I mean, yeah, technically William Contreras, if you just do like pure value standpoint, technically outperformed him last year. I don't really see that being as reliable. You're talking about, a 290 batting average last year, 291 batting average for Contreras last season. And I wrote in my early top 10 rankings article from Fantasy Six Pack that, I don't know if we can really count on, a 20% K rate again from him. That's not really who he's been. Yeah, he's young, so you like to see the improvement, but that was a pretty massive improvement of 7% from the season before. You don't usually see that. So, power pretty comparable. Although the one red flag for Contreras is that the power actually dropped last year. Like, yeah, nobody expected the pace that he had in 2022 off, playing just like 96 games or whatever it was to continue, but to actually have less home runs, in playing more, like that sort of like, wait, you went the wrong way. Like, what happened? So that's kind of a red flag for me, and why Adley is obviously the guy, but you're right, Eric. Like the price for him is just too much. I'm gonna stick with old reliable, man. It's Will Smith. You just said it, like that lineup is loaded. And if I can get him 3 rounds later than Adley, then that's who I want. I think somebody almost no doubt will reach for Contreras as well, just based off of, just sort of the younger guy. He could take a leap. Will Smith might be a little boring at this point. You kind of know what he gets, but like, dude, he's just gonna perform.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys as well. Like any of these other 3 guys, I'm very happy to take. I will say, and again, not just being a homer, but the Real Muto, obviously he's going to get you a little more help in the steals department, but you're going to take a hit in average and or OBP. So, excuse me, that's kind of the big thing with him. His K percentage is up a little bit higher as well. So of the 3, he's obviously the last one I'm targeting. But if I'm going to miss out on these guys, I'm okay with it. Because there's still a good group of guys here that we're going to just jump into right now. So after the top 3 to 4 catchers that we've just talked about, we see basically 2 groups of players lumped together here. So, and that's looking at their current ADP. So I want you guys to give me, I'll read the names off, but, which player from these 2 groups, basically give me one per group to talk about, do you think provides the best combination of value and productivity? So group 1, we're looking at Yanier Diaz, you got Cal Raleigh, Sean Murphy, and Sal Perez. Joe, we'll start with you on this one. Which one of these 4 guys in tier 2 are you looking at?
It's funny, when I initially wrote my early top 10 catcher list, Yanier Diaz would have been my hands down winner in this, but his ADP has climbed quite a bit since that time. And we're not even talking a month ago. Like, I think people are starting to dig back into the numbers a little bit more, and they're realizing that he does, and you can see it right on the screen here if you're watching here on YouTube. In just 104 games, he hit 23 home runs, tied for second most with Sal Perez, who played 36 more games, had 203 more plate appearances. That's pretty crazy. His batting average was crazy. He doesn't walk a lot, but he also doesn't strike out a lot. I think there is, I don't know if there's really any room for improvement there as far as like batting average. Maybe his OBP can go up if he starts taking more walks, but we're talking about the Dodgers being a loaded lineup. The Astros are loaded as well. They always are. So him being there, even if he bats kind of near, in this bottom half of the lineup, is still good. But with draft cost in mind, I'm going to go back to another old reliable and a Sal Perez. I know his batting average is dropping every year now, but the power is unquestioned. he could still get it done even on a Royals team that struggled offensively last year. I think they're going to get better. I think we're going to see one of our first base players that we're going to talk about maybe take a little step forward in Vinnie P. Obviously, Bobby Witt's a stud. And so, Perez, the only kind of hiccup you have with him, obviously, is the injuries. He was able to play a fair number of games last year. We obviously know he's had years though where they're just lost seasons for him. So, but giving draft capital, I'll take him out of this group.
Yeah. All right, Eric, who you like?
Yeah, I'm kind of going a similar route to what Joe was just saying. Like, my highest ranked and my number 5 catcher after those first 4 we were talking about is Yainer Diaz. I mean, I think the quality of contact is really, borderline elite. He could be a guy that pushes 30 home runs. Now the Maldonado's out of there. Hopefully he gets another 150, 200 more plate appearances this year in a loaded lineup in a good park. A lot of it's there. Yeah, it doesn't walk that much, but everything else is there, and contact rates are fine too. So, but similarly to what Joe was saying, I think the best value here, at least for me, is Sean Murphy, and the fact that he is also, arguably the best all-around catcher, or at least one of the top, 2 or 3 once you factor in defense and arm, game calling, etc. That's to keep his bat in the lineup. And another loaded lineup there with Atlanta, who they're all paying a combined $14 this year to have guys like Acuna and Albies and Riley and all them, Metals, and just a loaded lineup 1 through 9 really. When they have a former, they have RC in the 9 hole, you have Kelenic down there, so it's a pretty solid lineup throughout, even the bottom part of it. And Murphy was, first half of the year, one of the top, I think, 3 catchers for fantasy in the game. And he did fizzle out a bit in the second half. And he's talking about how the humidity got to him. Obviously, much different weather down there in Atlanta than he was used to in Oakland. So I'm hoping maybe his, another year and more acclimated to it. Maybe it doesn't affect him as much as we get into July, August, and September, the dog days of the season. Because you look at the metrics here, and the surface stats have always been solid. He's always been like right around 20 home runs. Right around 250 each of the last 2 years. Good OBP guy as well. A lot of good metrics here. Quality of contact, 16% barrel rate, 91.5 mile an hour average exit velocity, 46% hard hit rate. Contact rates are all kind of slightly below league average, but fine. It doesn't chase that much. A lot of good metrics in the profile. So I'm hoping that I don't think he's going to be as good as he was in the first half from last year, but I think he could take a step forward this year, and maybe get, have that first 25 homer season when he's hitting 260 or so. And he's going, 35, 40 picks after Diaz. So I do have Diaz ranked higher, but I think Murphy's still a pretty solid, draft day investment, just given the value he provides.
Yeah. Yeah. Of this group, I'm with you, Eric. I like Sean Murphy the best. I think that lineup alone just further sells it for me. I've had him on teams the past few years and have always been like, usually I hate having to worry about catcher. I just didn't have to worry about it. He was plug and play. You go with it and you get decent productive stats out of him as well. All right. So looking at this next group here, we've got Wilson Contreras. We got Frankie Alvarez, Gabby Moreno, and Keibert Ruiz. Eric, we'll piggyback off of your last one with this. Which one of these 4 guys are you looking at?
I mean, it's probably the least exciting and least sexy of this group, but I've long said that sexy doesn't always win championships, and production does and consistency does for the most part. So I'm going with Wilson Contreras. Alvarez, the power is absolutely there. I've seen it firsthand multiple times. I just question the average with Alvarez, and we saw that last year. The average was only 209. Yeah, he's better than that. I don't think he's going to be 209 moving forward. But Moreno, kind of opposite of Alvarez. He's the one where I almost went with him because obviously the contact skills, the approach has always been really good with him, and he started giving us that hint of potential, further power growth late last season and into the postseason on their surprise run there to the World Series. So I almost went with him. I'm not really a huge Ruiz guy, but Contreras, he's the old man of this group by probably close to a decade. I think Ruiz is 23, 24, and Wilson Contreras, he's got to be 30? Yeah, he's 31. So definitely the old man of this group, but just super consistent. You know what you're getting with him. Like every last 3 years, so, since the COVID year, he's been just a tick under 500 plate appearances every year, 21, 22, 20 home runs, even gives you a handful of steals, 5, 4, and 6 the last 3 years. And, an average that, he's a 257 career hitter, was 264 last year. OBP is always in that 340 to 350 range. And St. Louis, I think the St. Louis lineup is due for a bounce back. I think they had a lot of guys that underperformed, a lot of guys, that are veterans like Goldie and Arenado, etc. I think Jordan Walker takes a step forward as well this year. So I think this is going to be a nice bounce back and a pretty good lineup throughout, and he'll be hitting right in the middle of it. So plenty of run scoring and RBI opportunities there. So I like Contreras a lot this year. Again, it's not the sexy pick, but I've already got him in a few leagues, and I'll probably get him in a few more.
All right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's Wilson Contreras as well. I mean, people are going to look back at last year, and as somebody who had him in a couple of different leagues, man, he left a bad taste in your mouth overall, right? He had a horrendous first half. Then he was being benched a bunch, but then like the second half splits, it was just like he was a different player. A 240 average in the first half, was striking out a ton, 309 batting average in the second half, cut down on all of that, hit the same amount of home runs in the first and second half. And like, if anybody, really knows, first half, second half of baseball isn't really first half, second half. It's not like actual half. Like there are less games after the second half a lot of times. So like and you see it, right? He played 78 games, 45 games. He hit the same number of home runs. He was a different player. He was the player that we are used to seeing. The reason why you drafted him probably in the top 5 catchers last season, right? He bounced back big time in the second half, and I'm expecting that to kind of roll over into this season. My initial top 10 rankings for catcher actually had him outside the top 10, but new projections rolling around, and he got himself back in there in the mix, and so he's the guy who I would want, and his ADP hasn't quite caught up yet.
Yeah, I'm going to make it a clean sweep with you guys and go with Contreras. I love the power from Alvarez. I like the upside with Moreno as well. So I would say Moreno's probably like a 1B for me of these two. Yeah. Alvarez, I just need to see more, but he's still young. He's got plenty of time to, kind of come into his own, hopefully drop that K rate down, increase the walk rate a little bit, and really increase the average and OBP. It's too many strikes against him for me to want to be able to jump into it. So, all right. So the last question we got here for catcher is basically, if you decide that you're punting the catcher position, who's one of your favorite late round draft targets for your standard 12 to 14 team league drafts? Eric, what you got?
Well, if people were paying close attention, they would have saw his name flash across the screen.
I realized I screwed that up.
There's actually a lot. If you're just playing in a 12-team league, which plenty of people do, this is definitely a position that you can wait. I mean, there's some fun names early that we talked about, but you get in like that 10 to 16 range of catcher rankings and ADP. There's actually a lot of fun names in this range. I love guys like Bo Naylor, Logan O'Hoppe, Luis Campuzano, a lot of fun names that I think could have nice breakout years. But I went a little deeper with mine. Again, a guy that you can absolutely get the last round of a 12-teamer. And I've been getting him a lot, in all the DCs and best balls I've been doing. As my C2, I've been getting this guy a lot, and that's Austin Wells from the New York Yankees. And the guy that has pretty good left-handed power, flashed that a bit when he got up to the Bronx late last year. And looks like he's going to be the guy. Higashioka is out of town. So I think, you're going to see and maybe close to 500 plate appearances from Austin Wells. And, the average won't be spectacular, probably more, 240, 250. So it won't kill you either. But you could be looking at, if he gets 500 plate appearances, with his lefty power in Yankee Stadium, you could be looking at 25 home runs this year. And you can get him for, again, last round in like a 12-teamer. And even the ADP for, those deeper formats is really good too, for what he brings to the table. And again, he's probably going to be the starter there and get the bulk of the reps. Limited time last year is only 75 plate appearances, but had a 14% barrel rate, 42% hard hit rate. Doesn't walk a ton, so he gets a little ding in like an OBP format. But if you're getting 240, 250 with 25 home runs, is there going to be a massive value gap between him and Alvarez this year? I don't really think there is. Yeah, I would take Alvarez, but he's going 125, 150 picks earlier. I would much rather, instead of going in that range, if I'm not getting one of those top guys, I'm going to wait until this range, get a Wells, get a Bo Naylor, get an El Hoppy, Campuzano, whatever. A lot of fun talent in this range of rankings.
Yeah.
Right, Joe,
do want to say hi to Uncle Ted here. He brought up Jonah Heim's 95 RBI last year was insane, 20 better than second place. I get it. And honestly, I had to kind of do a double take when I did all the number crunching and Jonah wasn't ranked very high. I was like, wait a minute, didn't he have an else? Oh, that's right. His second half was abysmal. Like scary bad. I mean, you probably needed to drop him in redraft leagues, right? I mean, he went from a 282 batting average, hitting 12 home runs, 43 runs scored, 59 RBI, and it was, bad. 217 batting average. It was just, and the power wasn't there because he just wasn't making contact. So I don't know about you, Eric and AJ, but I'm kind of staying away from him.
Yeah, I'm very lukewarm on him, but I did have him in a couple of leagues, and you probably added him off the waiver wire if you had him last year. This wasn't a guy that was really getting drafted in a lot of leagues outside of deeper formats. But yeah, that second half, like the slugging dropped 100 points, average dropped 65 points. 217, 283, 374 in the second half. He was not startable in the second half. So
yeah,
I think that, obviously what he did in the first half was great, but yeah, that kind of left a sour taste. And I don't hate, I think the ADP is fine. I just like a lot of other guys, values better than his this year. So I probably won't have a lot of shares of him.
I agree with you. The ADP isn't bad. I mean, in your standard, one catcher, 10 to 12 team leagues, he's bottom of the list. He's the last two round type of guy. But there's some guys that we're going to talk about here who are going after him. So you're talking about ADP value, Uncle Ted. Then I think some of these other guys have better value. And my pick here, AJ, I know you were trying to get to that, so I'll just cut right to it. Here is Luis Campuzano. Campuzano, sorry. Look, I mean, this guy was a top prospect for a while. Kind of didn't really hit right away, right? He struggled really, really bad there in his first cup of coffee in 2022. And 2021 was way worse. But last year, kind of started getting it going, right? Just small sample size though, so take it with a grain of salt. But again, if you miss out on your targets early on and you really wanted to take a chance, or just click that little star or whatever next to the player on your waiver wire, because he may not be drafted. He's a guy you want to keep an eye on for sure. See if what he did last year with that 319 batting average, BABIP was only 331, so it wasn't like crazy high, right? He only struck out 12% of the time. So good plate discipline there. That's the kind of stuff you want to see from these young guys if they can take a pitch, not be chasing a bunch of pitches. And look, there's a lot of guys at the end of the drafting, at the end of the catcher position. You're going to look at them and man, they're going to sink your batting average so bad. You got to steer clear of those guys. So if you're going to punt on catcher, go after a guy like Camposano. So who, maybe 319 is a little high for him, but he's not going to tank your batting average. Even like some of the guys that are getting drafted ahead of him who, Alvarez is awesome because his power is unquestioned. But him and Cal Riley, man, you're dealing with that 220 batting average. You're hoping, right? And so that hurts. Yeah. You lose your ratios when you draft guys like that. That's hard to make up.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm not going. Excuse me. I'm not going as far down the well as you guys here. I've got. There's a couple other guys that I looked at there, but in the standard 12, 14 team league, I'm hovering right at the current ADP 14. That's Logan O'Hoppe. I just love what I saw from this guy early last year. Obviously, season got derailed with the shoulder injury. Steamer's looking at roughly 400 plate appearances again this year. 49 runs, 19 homers, 55 ribbies, 3 stolen bases to boot. So, 251 average and 329 OBP. So I just like the upside with this guy. Obviously, I've watched him a little bit more closely in the Phillies minor league system before they traded him. So I kind of just kept tabs on him, and I just love the upside from him. He's only 24. He's shown he's got good power already when he was healthy last year. So he's going to be my pick. And a lot of times I'm just scouring, looking at the other teams, seeing who's drafted, and if everyone else has drafted a catcher, then I'm just sitting and waiting. If somebody wants to take a second one, then maybe I'll jump on board. So that's kind of when I know I gotta make my stab here. All right, well that about does it for catcher here. So the next thing we want to do here is just jump into our first base position, and we will start that off with Mr. Freddie Freeman. He is obviously, probably the still unquestioned number one first baseman, being that his ADP was around 8.2 on Fantasy Pros. This was a couple days ago. But is there an argument that the current Braves first baseman should be Fantasy's number one first baseman drafted this year? And that would be Matt Olson. Eric, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think you can absolutely make an argument for it. I do have Freeman as my number one guy, but a lot of what Matt Olson did last year, there's a lot of legitimacy to that. It's gonna be hard to. It's always hard to replicate 50 plus home run season. That's why it's only been done by a few guys in back-to-back years in the history of baseball, and half of those guys were all roided up back 20 years ago. But you look at what he did this past year. Obviously he's always had the elite power. The barrel rates has been insanely high every year of his career. Average exit velocity is always in among the league leaders, same with his hard hit rate. And he actually went to new heights. He had a career high barrel rate, exit velocity, and hard hit rate last year, along with the highest walk rate of his career too, which was really good to see. And he was always a good walk rate guy before that, but he took it up to 14.4%. Keeps the K rate in check as well, and just hitting right in the middle of a loaded Atlanta Braves lineup. Like he's got, Acuna, Albies, Riley, and many others all hitting right around him. And, he hits the ball hard to all fields. It's one of these pull hitter guys. You see his spray chart. He's plenty to left field, to left center, to center, and obviously right field as well. So maybe I don't believe in the 283 average, but because he does run below average contact rates, especially in zone. But again, the whiff and chase rates aren't bad. So yeah, I think maybe he's closer to 260, 270 with 40 plus home runs still. So yeah, he's definitely in that discussion. It's just so hard to go against Freeman. I don't think there's a more consistent elite player than Freddie Freeman. Like the dude is just been, he doesn't miss time. I hope I didn't just jinx him. He doesn't miss time. Like the floor.
Or just make sure AJ doesn't say it, because then it is a
then it happens. So
I mean, I think you could make a case that he has the highest floor of any player in baseball. You can
Yeah.
make a strong argument. You look at his career. He's missed. These are his games missed over the last several seasons. The last time he missed any significant time was 2017, but since then he missed 0, 4, 0, 3, 3, 1, and those are probably all just like hey, you've played 89 games in a row. Here's a breather on a
That's
Sunday
probably the last
afternoon.
game of the season.
Yeah, or something like that. And you just look like every full year, the last 4 full seasons, he's been over 113 runs. He put him right in for 30 home runs. He's been over 100 RBI. Career 301 hitter, hasn't hit below 300 since 2015. It's just like, or excuse me, he had 295 in 2019, but still, like, it's so elite. So yeah, he's again not the sexy play. You looking at the Tatises, the Jordans, the Sotos, the Judges, but yeah, he's the best bet to return first round value year in, year out. So if I'm in that back end of the first round, I have no issue taking Freddie Freeman there. I will do it happily.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot to add here. I mean, Eric hit it all on the nose. Freddie Freeman's the real deal, and he's not going anywhere. I feel like we tried to make a case for him to not be the first player. Like we were trying, man. We were like, oh, it's gonna be it's gonna be Vlad time. No, it didn't happen. Like, stop it. We're done. Like, this is. I get it. Like, everybody's looking at the age, going, "Oh, this is the year." No, he's just gonna be one of those guys. I mean, come on. We all wanted it to happen last year, right? Oh, the power dropped to 21 home runs. Oh, he might not be Freddie Freeman anymore. All right, he turned around, hit 29. Oh, and then to add 23 steals to boot. Like, what? I mean, I know the new stolen base rules were in play, but this guy had never stolen more than 13, which, oh, by the way, happened to be in 2022. So, like, he just is like, oh, I'm older. Oh, I'm now better. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it's working. So just draft him in the first round and then never worry about first base the rest of the draft at this point. Yep. I know you're going to have to deal with corner infield at some point in a lot of leagues, but man, just you are set it and forget it with Freeman. And like you said, Eric, he plays every day. So it's so much better.
Well, he played almost every day, except he missed one compared to Mr. Olsen. So I guess we'll give him a pass on that. But yeah, I'm I'm right there with you guys as well. Freeman's just he's too damn good. Both lineups are stellar, but Freeman is the guy. So all right, moving on to the next one here. Mr. Bryce Harper, another hometown hero for me. How exactly does his full on transition to first base from outfield and DH factor into your rankings of him? Joe, we'll start with you on this one.
So I've been putting up the slides here with some stats. I felt like it was boring to just show like a Bryce Harper stat line. Like, we know he's good, right? Bryce Harper, though, like in years past, can get pushed down the list of outfields, right? It's easier to do that. There's a lot of guys at the top of outfield that you can push Bryce Harper behind, for multiple reasons, right? Some of it's injury concern, consistency with Bryce Harper. Like he's not always he can go in some pretty deep slumps. He's getting older, right? There's a lot of reasons why we can throw Bryce Harper down there. Now that he's first base eligible, man, like, and we're going to talk about this soon, but like there is a massive drop off from the elite guys to like the next group of guys. And Bryce Harper now gets to make that group of elite first basemen one player deeper. And so Vlad Sedler here at RotoGut on Twitter. If you all don't know him, you need to follow him. He is the real deal. He said it might be easy for you, but one of the toughest decisions for me in a draft is the 14 to 17 overall range, deciding between, catch these names, Yordan Alvarez, total stud for the Astros, Matt Olson, we just talked about him, and Bryce Harper. So Bryce Harper is joining that group of elite players, putting himself in really close to first round discussions. Now, Vlad is almost no doubt talking about a 15-team NFBC team at this point because that's what he does. So that just goes to show you where Bryce Harper's value is, and I'm in total agreement. He needs to be pumped up because he's going to solidify your first base position as long as he can stay healthy. What he did last year coming off that injury was amazing. I did not think he was going to play that well, and I whiffed big time on not taking a chance on him in drafts where he was falling.
Yeah, Eric?
Yeah, no, I love this move for Harper. Is obviously, when he's on the field, he's elite. I mean, this is, as long as he doesn't have major injuries and derails the second half of his career, this is a guy that's probably a first ballot Hall of Famer down the road. Guy's going to make a run at 500 plus home runs. One of my favorite players to watch. I love the passion he plays with. I know he rubs people the wrong way because he's brash. I think he's great for baseball.
Yeah.
In a great hitters park there in Philly. Good lineup as well. Not quite the caliber of the Dodgers or the Braves or whatever, but still, a top 5 or 6 lineup in baseball more often than not. And I think this is a great move because, again, he's been great when he's on the field, but that's been the issue with him. Like he's not Freddie Freeman when it comes to durability and racking up those plate appearances. We've seen him, just this past year, miss time. I bet you. I'm trying to pull up his stats here for this year after year. I bet he doesn't have more than 2 seasons over 600 plate appearances or something like that. So he has. Oh, he had
0.
4, but over 600
plate appearances. Yeah.
plate appearances.
Sorry, I was looking at that bad.
He had 4, but none since 2019. I mean, he was at 599 in 2021. But that's the thing with him. He had that 3-year stretch, 2018 to 2020, when he didn't miss much time. But since then, he missed 21 games in 2021, missed 63 in 2022, and missed 36 this past year. So it kind of has been, kind of in and out of the lineup. It's hard to really get your footing there. But you look at, he's still one of the more elite hitters in the game, over 285 each of the last 3 years. He's been always in like a 35 or so homer pace, and he had 35 home runs his last, quote unquote, full year. I think you see that power get right back up there. Only had 21 last year, but coming back off the elbow injury, that's to be expected, and still had, 293 average and a 401 OBP.
Yeah.
So I think first base is going to be great for him. Help keep him in the lineup more. Obviously, less strenuous than being in the outfield, crashing in the walls, covering all that ground, less movement, obviously, at first base. So I love it. So I think this is a nice little boost to his value, and hopefully, fingers crossed, because I have a lot of dynasty shares of him, that he can keep on the field more frequently moving forward.
Yeah, I was gonna point out his OBP. Like, he's one of the guys that, like, in an OBP league is gonna get a massive boost. Like he's gonna be over 400 most likely, and that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Philly fan. I love Harper. I love everything you said, Eric, with the him being brash and being a player's player. He's a guy who's out there. He wants to win. I don't want to say more than anybody, but he seems like that's his attitude, when he's out there, especially when it comes to the playoffs. I saw a tweet earlier, just some random, follower or whatever had just a picture of him, coming around the third base, and, the third base coach all the way down at home plate, like, stop. And he's just like, fuck you. I'm going, man. And that's the attitude I love. I think this is a great move for him as well. I think it's going to help his health and help him, maintain being healthy throughout the next 8 years of this contract that he signed, to try to help Philly get back to the World Series, hopefully win one. And I just think it's a great move for him. I think it's a great move for fantasy as well. But yeah, Joe, you alluded to it here. This drop off that we see, the depth at first base just falls hard after these first 5 guys, ADPs. There seems to be a trend of younger talent, though, that's creeping up the ranks here. So, are you seeing the same kind of trends, or are you waiting on the position a little bit more, or are you just wanting to find yourself locking into one of these top 5 guys and then not having to worry about it? Eric?
Yeah, so if I don't get one of the top three for me, with Freeman, Olsen, or Harper, I'm waiting a bit because
Mhm.
Vlad is great, but I think he's still going too high for my liking in drafts, and I'm finding myself waiting till right around that 100 ADP mark, give or take, or even later. I mean, I don't want to wait too much later, but Tristan Cassis, I'm gonna get him everywhere. I have him ranked in my rankings, ranked ahead of Vlad Jr. He's going 70, 80 picks behind him because Cassis was one of the 5 best hitters in baseball the last second half of the last season. He was 5th in both WRC Plus and WOBA behind, I believe it was Freeman, Acuna, Betts, and Ohtani, I want to say. Or maybe it wasn't Freeman, it was Olsen, but still, obviously 4 absolute studs. And then there was Tristan Cassis, 5th in both categories. So I've been going after him. I like Spencer Steer a lot. He's got that versatility as well. Like, let's look at that eligibility. First, second, third, and outfield, which also means you can put him at middle and corner infield, which doesn't really get talked about when you talk about eligibility. You can put him at 6 spots, technically. So
Yeah.
you gotta love that. In a good lineup, obviously great park as well. Christian Walker is like old reliable there, super undervalued, puts up good numbers. So I think he's a great target there. And you get Torkelson as well, who made some strides late last year.
Mhm.
He's in that kind of same range as Cassis, going a little bit behind him. But not even if you wait a little longer, get a guy like Vinnie P, who I still love a lot. Christian Encarnacion Strand has a lot of upside in that ballpark. So yeah, I mean, if I don't get one of those top 3, I'm pretty much waiting another several rounds and getting one of these. You mentioned that a lot of upside guys, and I'll be happy to scoop up one of them.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as Eric here. If I'm not getting Freeman or Olsen, and I'll be honest with you, it's still tough for me to pull the trigger on a first base player. I know Freeman is elite, but I don't know if I can count on 23 steals a game from him. I want somebody in that first round who I can bank on giving me a bit more speed. But we talked about this at length, so I won't go into too much more detail. But we understand why Freeman is up there. It works, right? Want to see more consistency from Vlad before I pull the trigger on that. Pete Alonso, we know the power is there, but man, that batting average yo-yos like with him, and it's like, which one are you gonna get every year? Bellinger was fine last year, obviously, bounced back, trying to go for that contract, hasn't signed yet. So what does that have to say? Goldschmidt kind of took a downward trend there. I like him a lot, but somebody who I would be willing to pull a trigger on here, Nolan Jones, seemed like he really fit in Colorado. He loved that ballpark. 2020 guy last year, that was pretty solid. So he'd be a guy I'd be willing to kind of pull the trigger there. But if I'm right there with you, Eric, like if I miss, I'm probably just waiting, because the difference in value between like Paul Goldschmidt and like the 15th first baseman really isn't a ton. And now if Goldschmidt turns around and turns back into the Paul Goldschmidt we all know and love for many years, then that would be different. But like the draft value at that point isn't there. There's some guys who I think have a little bit more upside, more speed than a lot of these guys outside of like Jones. Goldschmidt can steal, but I don't know how much we're really relying on that either. But it probably would wait. I probably would wait for like the Tristan Casas range and some of these other guys that we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys on that. If I'm not getting one of those first 2-3 guys, I'm probably punting for a little bit, and then happy moving on to find greener pastures and filling out the rest of my roster first before I dip in to first base here.
This is the decent one too. Nate Lowe, super low draft capital right now. ADP right now is 178 consensus over on Fantasy Pros. So that's a good one too.
That's Nathaniel Lowe to you.
Yeah, I know.
How dare you?
Depending on what site you look at.
That's true.
Indeed. All
gotta
right,
gotta love matching data between all of the different sites and all the different spellings and all the different little like accent marks.
I was just gonna say that like, some webs. I wish we could come to a consensus, and some use the accents like over the N and the Cunha or the I and Tatis. I try to use those. That's how they spell their own names, and then also either some sites use like the junior for Luis Roberts,
Yes.
or some sites don't.
Yeah.
So I'm doing like V lookups. I'm like, it's. Can we just
I've got
a
scripts that
consensus?
clean up names, but 2 years ago when Fangraphs added all the accent marks, all my scripts were obsolete. I'm like, come on, what is happening? I had to like rewrite them all.
And then you get some that you download like from a website into a CSV or whatever, and they'll put like the last name, comma, first name.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
like, can we just not? Can we just come to an agreement of like every site uses the accents and puts the junior same format just so it can be easier.
Everybody
Please.
get on board. All right, come on.
Yes.
We're just analysts
and
here.
if we've got Will Smith, and Will Smith, we've got to figure out a way to make him different in their name.
Yes.
or like Luis Garcia. There was like 14 of those at one point. Like so much that I had to put more so the Houston and the Washington one. I had to put like differentials on my own spreadsheet because I was pulling the wrong age.
Yes.
For each of them. It's
I combined their team a lot to V look up their name plus team.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's obnoxious, especially when somebody gets traded. Then you're like, oh wait, I gotta go change everything manually.
All right,
good times. Little backstage pass into the process.
Yeah. So the last guy we got here, we mentioned his name a couple of times here, and that's Mr. Vinnie Pasquatino. After his breakout in 2022, he was definitely a trendy mid-round pick last year in drafts, but his season was obviously cut short due to a shoulder injury. Only played 61 games, had 9 homers, 24 runs, 26 ribbies. Obviously, you can see the stuff on the board here. Also, if you're not seeing it and you're just listening, 24 runs, 26 ribbies. I said that. Slash line 245, 324, 437. So, Joe, where are you targeting Vinnie P for 2024?
I'm probably not. I'm going to be honest with you. I've got him ranked a little lower than his ADP would have him right now. And so I'm not going to get him in a lot of leagues. I've said this a few times. He gives me Eric Hosmer-ish vibes. Like he's going to be fine. He's going to be an overall okay player. And yes, Eric Hosmer had like 1 or 2 like years where you're like, all right, this is it. And then like the next season was just sort of like, all right, he's going to be a good batting average player. I think last year's 247 was just really odd. His BABIP was 250. I mean, his expected batting average was 279. So that tells you right there that he's a better hitter than 247. And that was one of the reasons why he was such a trendy pick last year, right? 295 batting average from first base that you could get fairly late. He had 10 home runs in 72 games. I think he's got more power at his bat than what we saw last year. A better batting average, but I'm not sure we're really ever going to see more than like 22 home runs with like a 280, 290 batting average, 70 to 80 runs in RBI. Like that's fine. And if you get that where you have to draft him this year, that's probably going to be a very good value for you. But there's some guys even going after him that I think can slightly outperform him pretty easily if just like the right tweak is made to like their swing or something, which we see all the time. So,
all right, Eric, thoughts?
I love Vinnie Pasquatino. I've always been a big Vinnie P guy, and I think what you saw in 2022 was 100% legit. I mean, you look under the hood. This guy. Yeah, I agree. Like he's not the sexiest player around, but he's going to put up a high average. There's no doubt in my mind. And this is a guy that ran zone contact rates of 92% and 93.1% so far. overall contact rate in the 84-85% range, swinging strike rate like 6.5-7%. This guy puts the bat on the ball, doesn't swing and miss much. Like, you look at, you have the numbers right there in front of you. You look at that rookie year when he was basically as many walks as strikeouts. And yeah, I agree with the power. The power, even last year, 2022, I should say, it wasn't elite. It's never going to be elite. But can he be, close to 25 home runs? Sure. I think he could even, flirt with 300 batting averages. And yeah, that Kauffman Stadium isn't great on power and either, which definitely doesn't help. Maybe he could be 30 home runs in like Coors or Great American Ballpark, but he's got to deal with Kauffman, so that does limit him a bit. But for this year, you're not going to draft him probably as your starter, but as a solid high floor corner infielder. And I think that Kansas City lineup could surprise some people if some of the young guys take a step forward. And obviously, you got Bobby Witt Jr. in there. So yeah, I like him a lot as a corner infielder, and that's what you got to draft him as.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought on it. I mean, you hit it on the head there with corner infielder. He's definitely a guy I'd be targeting more to fill that slot, or a bench, first baseman, for the off days and whatnot. And if he gets hot, ride it while you got it. So, all right, so that pretty much wraps it up here for first base, but we want to touch on our late round first base targets here, just like we did with catcher. So Eric, we will start with you. Who is your favorite or one of your favorite late round first base targets?
I got to be honest, I don't like Benny in this range. Hopefully I already have my first base and corner infield locked up before the last round or two, and I can go, outfield, pitcher, middle infield, whatever. But, one that I have found myself targeting a decent amount so far is Brandon Drury. A guy that he's got a hit in the middle of that Angels lineup. Ohtani's gone. Hopefully Trout's there for, at least 3/4 of a season. And you look at, I think people thought that last year was a drop off compared to 2022. And yeah, he had, 26 fewer runs scored, but, back-to-back years over 25 home runs, back-to-back years right over a 260 average. He's got, good, not great power. He's 11% barrel rate, EV right around 90 miles an hour, hard hit rate about 46%. So above average power, can get you a good average as well, or a solid enough average. He's been over 260 each of the last 3 years, and he should have a decent amount of RBI opportunities. So maybe a guy that can flirt with a combined 150 to 160 runs in RBI. Won't give you any speed at all, but if you're just getting him to get that 260 and 25 to 30 home runs, and hopefully he's healthy, that's the thing. He's had these home run totals while having 568 and 523 plate appearances. So yeah, he gets dinged up, but if he can, give you 600 plus plate appearances, could be a 30 homer bat. That's definitely in play here, and maybe has dual eligibility in your league too, which is really nice. So yeah, I like Drury a lot at his draft price this year.
All right, Joe, who do you got?
Yeah, big fan of him. I think he's super underrated. I think all those years of like super disappointing play really carries a lot of weight for him. But he could be a solid player here. So my late round first base target, a guy who you all called boring, but come on, you said it earlier, man. Boring isn't always bad, right? Boring can be good.
That's true.
You swing and miss at this position. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has been getting better just about every season, right? 15 home runs, 17 home runs, and 21, right? Seeing more time at the plate. So that obviously helps those totals. The White Sox were an absolute train wreck last year, and he still was able to, hit 80 RBI, 258 batting average. Wasn't great. I don't think you're getting him for batting average boost, but he's not going to tank it, right? He's not some of these other, back in the day, right? You would take these late first base guys who could hit 30 home runs, but they were hitting for 225. He's better than that, right? So you've got that there. I think he's got, he's still a young guy, 25. He'll be 26 at the start of the season, just about. So going into the prime of his career here, you would like him to take a few more walks. So in OBP leagues, maybe kind of hold off on him. But I think there's another step to his game here, and you just have to hope the real studs in that White Sox lineup can stay healthy and help Vaughn out as well. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see 25, almost 30 bombs from Vaughn next season.
All right. So speaking of boring, I believe, Joe, you called my guy boring. And that is Mr. Josh Bell with the Miami Marlins here, entering his age 31 season. The past few years, the past 3 years, he's kind of bounced around between a bunch of teams here. But, 2021, he had 568 plate appearances, jumped up to 647 in 22, back down to 617 last year. Excuse me. Homers have been consistent. 27, 17, and 22. The runs have been good up through, the first 2 years were pretty decent, but then last year, dropped back down to 52. Part of that's playing on just bad teams, I guess, not getting enough opportunities. Ribbies are consistent as well. So he's going to get you plenty of counting stats. Again, the idea of a corner infield position is where I'm more targeting to pick up a Josh Bell type. His average, his OBP, and his WOBA all dropped, pretty significantly last year by about 20 points each. OBP 40 points almost. So there is some concern there, but I feel like a lot of averages and OBPs were just down last year across the board in baseball. So hoping for a bit of a bounce back on those fronts this year. But I definitely like Bell's upside. And again, if he's someone that you can plug and play, especially in a corner infield spot, and possibly just your utility spot on off days or whatnot, he's worth having in a lineup, at least in my opinion. So, all right.
Yeah. One good thing about Josh Bell. So I did a whole article a couple of years ago about kind of comparing exit velocity, max exit velocity, launch angles, all that kind of stuff to see if you can predict home runs. There was two players who kind of jumped out when I looked at their stats. How did this guy hit this many home runs? One was Marcus Semien, and the other one was Josh Bell. Josh Bell hits the ball super hard. One of the always in the top for max exit velocity, but his launch angle is always it was a little bit higher last year, but we've seen years with him where it's down in the fours, and you're how does that work? It's always mind-boggling to me to see these guys hit the ball on average, the launch angle of 5.9, 4.9. It's how does that ball carry that far? Because you're just hitting the living shit out of the ball. That is why. And so
he's just an angry swinger. I mean, pretty much. That's what he wants to do, and he's done it. Plenty of homers to his credit. So again, I like him. I've watched him ever since he was back in Pittsburgh. I've had him in a couple of dynasty leagues, early on when he started his career out, and just was always a fan of his. So he's kind of my kryptonite. I'm one of those guys you just have to have.
All right. Well,
okay. Well, that pretty much does it for the show. Eric, thank you very much for coming on. It's always a pleasure having you on the show here at Fantasy Six Pack Hour, and awesome knowledge. Great to have you and all the information you bring. Before we let you go, though, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find your stuff this year, and let us know what you got coming up.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It was always fun talking with you guys, and I love these two positions. Catcher is usually boring for most people, but I love the catcher spot. So definitely enjoyed this. And hey, you can find me on Twitter, EricRoss04 or X, whatever we call it these days. I still call it Twitter.
We do too.
Yeah, I think most people do. But toolshitfantasy.com is my Patreon. On my rankings, and I do almost daily content over there. Toolshit podcast with Chris Clegg, and then doing a lot of work over at Rotoballer and FTN as well, which are both phenomenal sites with great content and tools and all this and that. So definitely recommend both of those sites as well.
All right. Well,
awesome.
Thank you again for coming on, Uncle Ted. Thanks for talking in the comments a bunch, man. We'll get to all the picture stuff in a few weeks. I could flood the comments and talk for another half hour with all the comments here, but we love it, man. Thanks for tuning in. But yeah, with that being said, Eric, thanks for coming on, man. We will have to do it again soon.
Absolutely.
All right, see you. All right. That is it for the show. Next week, I believe, if I can find the right sheet here. You've got it up probably better than I do at this point.
I do. We are
doing second and third base with Rudy Gamble. We are coming back to a Wednesday show next week. We had to switch some things around, but all good. We will be here. So the 21st is when we'll be live next week. But with that being said, again, hit that subscribe, hit that like button, leave those reviews, leave those comments. We like it. And we will see you all next week.
All right. Later.